Before we begin, the Differently Brained team wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we record, edit and stream this podcast. We pay our respects to all First Nations peoples and their elders, past, present and future. We extend our respect to all First Nations cultures and recognise their ongoing connection to the lands, waterways and communities.
Just a reminder that Differently Brained shares conversations about mental health and neurodivergence. Sometimes these topics can get a bit heavy, so please remember to check in with yourself before listening. And as always, please reach out for help if our chats have brought anything up for you. Now on with the show. Hello, and welcome to Differently Brained, the podcast where no brain is the same. I'm Jacinta Dietrich.
And I'm Lachlan Rutherford. Welcome to this episode of ours. It's a little bit interesting, this one, because it's a meta episode. We're going to be pulling back the proverbial curtains to look at this podcast on a podcast, an episode of our podcast.
Oh boy.
Namely, we're going to be talking about what making Differently Brained is like for two people who are neurodivergent and mentally ill. Yeah. I mean, am I wrong?
No.
Yes. So we started doing this podcast in 2023. Well, technically 2022, actually, because we recorded in 2022. And it started with a vision. And that vision was one of Jacinta's visions.
If someone had have asked me what year did you start in, I don't think, my concept of time right now is so whack that I can say, oh yeah, it started 18 months ago. But if someone had asked me what year you started, I absolutely would have forgotten. Indeed, like Lachlan says, it was, my idea. It was a shared situation.
It evolved in a group effort, but the brainchild was yours.
Thank you.
Yes.
Which fundamentally was because I was looking for information that I wanted and not finding it. And so really, it's just a sneaky way for us to dig around in everybody's brain and figure out what everyone else is doing, basically.
Yeah.
And then we thought, why not record it and share it with other people? Because if I was looking for it, I was pretty confident someone else was looking for it too.
Yeah. And I would say as well, it's also a little bit self-serving for us.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm speaking on behalf of myself, but you agree, so that's good. We're able to talk to people about experiences that are similar but vastly different from ours and make it so that we're actually we're in the students section of the classroom being taught these interesting things by our guests, and that's a really cool thing to be able to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't think there's an episode that I've come away from where I haven't been emotionally moved in some way and have absolutely learned something new, whether it's about myself or someone else or, different tools, different resources, things like that. Every single episode I come away with something different, and it is absolutely self-serving.
Yeah.
Because, it's just one of my favorite things to do. I love finding all of these stories and talking to people, and it's people who, we probably wouldn't be able to talk to on just a daily chat situation. So it's absolutely self-serving, but, we share it with you guys. So it's less selfish.
So the reasons of why we do this are, twofold, manyfold, really. It's being able to fill a space in the podcasting vacuum, and it's something to do as well.
Something to do.
And it seemed kind of pertinent to do this episode now, considering we are in the National Library of Victoria.
State Library of Victoria,
excuse me, who have a fantastic recording booth, which we are taking full advantage of. And since this is the first time that we're actually recording in the same space as each other, and it's kind of like a 18-month milestone, it's allowed us to, I guess, reflect on these past 18 months and what we've learned along the way, what we've struggled with, and what we've actually succeeded with in many ways along the way. So we're going to talk about that today. Jacinta, how about we start with you, because I'm going to ask.
You're just yapping away there.
Yeah. What are the things that you have found in the section of podcast production that you are involved in? What are your strengths, would you say? Because I can tell you what your strengths are, but I want to hear it from you. So there.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
So my role in the podcast is kind of like, I was going to say the front end stuff, but I don't mean that. I mean like the start.
Yeah.
So basically anything from whatever the start process is to the end of recording is me. So that's why everything sucks lately. But sorry, this is about our strengths.
Yeah.
My apologies.
Shut up.
So
Talk about your fucking strengths.
So I do, all of the guest hunting. I do all of the prepping and stuff. Not all of it, actually. You do a fair bit of research and stuff now. I'm the gal on the emails. I'm on the internet trying to find guests and things like that. I'm more of like the admin side of things, I guess you'd say.
Networking.
Yeah. Great, good one, yes. Yeah, I'm kind of like the non-technical person of the operation, I would say. So anything that's not technical is what I do, kind of. And so for me, I think the real strengths are that I do love a good chat. That has been something that I didn't really realize until I started doing the podcast and I got really into it. Now I'm like, yeah. So, I like to think that I'm very engaging. Maybe not for you guys to listen to, but, I'm having fun.
The numbers would suggest otherwise, maybe.
Oh, thanks. And we have had really wonderful feedback where guests have said, that we are very warm and approachable and comfortable. And that means so much because I know that, people are so generous with the stories that they share with us and that it needs to be a safe community. And the fact that they're willing to come so honestly and open up and then still leave and say, thank you, that was so lovely, so nice. Thank you for letting me share my story. I think that's really, really special. And I assume that that's a strength of ours where, not doing that. Well, we might be doing it by accident, but it's still a strength. So I think, our personalities also just, I think I tend to think kind of big picture, which is both a blessing and a curse in this. But it does mean that, there were a few people when we first started this who did assume that maybe this was going to be one of my hobbies that I started and realized how much work it was and I dropped it within a month kind of thing. And there are a few others that said, it's not going to take off. There's not an audience for this kind of thing. And I ignored them all, which, I think it's kind of a point of stubbornness. It wasn't necessarily that I was like, no, I'm great. It was just like, well, now I'm going to make it work because you said I couldn't. So, Spite Podcast, here we are. But, I am determined and I am stubborn and, I do every once in a while have just ridiculous amounts of confidence where I'm just like, yeah, it'll work. Why not? And I wing it. Most of our episodes are winged, are huang. This one is huang. We have 4 notes. And, I think that's okay. I think being able to just get in there and have a chat is sometimes just lovely. I don't know. I don't really know what my other strengths are. I'm more than comfortable to just slide into people's DMs, which everyone is just absolutely shocked about.
Yeah, I don't get it, man. But I'm glad that you do.
Thank you. That is generally the thing that people are most surprised that I do, is that I'll literally just contact people who are well above our station, especially when we started. I was just rogue with the emails.
Can you tell us some of those ones that are supposedly above our
Well,
our level?
I didn't expect to get Jordan Steele John.
I mean, yeah. I mean ones that you pitched to that we haven't heard back from.
Oh, we have heard back and they're just busy. But I would still desperately very much like to get Em Rusciano on the show, Chloe Hayden on the show. Look, honestly, there are probably more guests that I've pitched to than that we've had, obviously. But the ratio is probably 20 to 80 kind of thing in terms of 80% of people probably say no. But still to have, the authors and the people that we had last year and everything, that was still a shock to me because, I'm just a strange gal on the internet that's just like, hey, do you want to come chat with us online? So, yeah, I think just the random bouts of unearned confidence are a strength. What about you?
Well, before we get on to me, I want to also talk about the strength that you have of scheduling.
See, I don't think that's a strength. I don't think I'm particularly good at. If I was good at that, we would have had more consistent episodes and we would be more ahead than we are.
I don't necessarily believe that consistency means the same thing as doing something well. Because when you do schedule something like you did today, we have a list at the moment of a breakdown list of what we were going to do today with the space that we've got and the amount of time that we had to do it in, the order in which we were going to re-record a few things and all that kind of stuff. And you scheduled all of that, and I didn't even think of that. So
I think that's just that I'm a planning freak.
Well, I mean, that's a strength though, surely.
Yeah, I hadn't even, it's so naturally a part of how I function that I hadn't even thought about it. Because for a lot of other people, and I think that's why it's so nice to do this podcast with you and, having you stay with us at the moment, I don't think a lot of other people would enjoy my level of micromanagement, but it's not that I'm micromanaging you, it's that I'm micromanaging me, because otherwise I know that if I didn't make that list, I would have got home and I would have thought, oh shit, we didn't do this thing that I had already thought about and had planned to do, and I would be kicking myself that we didn't have that thing.
Yeah.
And I would take that personally, because if I had just written it down, if I had done this, if I had done that, then maybe we would have it, kind of thing. So, I do love a good plan. I do love a bit of structure. And you're right. I think that does really lend itself nicely to the podcast in terms of getting the content and things like that and making the most of our very, very, very tiny resources. Because, prior to these episodes, we were just in our respective garage and bedroom with, just entry-level stuff, and I think a strength together is that we've done something quite impressive given that it's just the two of us.
Yeah.
We have stretched our resources as far as they could possibly go.
Not just physical, technical resources, but, energy, a lot of the time and emotional. Yeah.
And I think the scheduling, the planning is a really big part of why I can do that, because, like I was saying with the big picture stuff, there are so many episode ideas that we've had that we just haven't had time for, because I've got all of those things that I plan it out, I write it down so I don't lose anything. And so, if we did this as a full-time job, or if we had the time, we probably have a year's worth of content written down somewhere.
Yeah.
We just don't have the recording stuff to do it and the time and the energy and things like that. So, I love a good plan. I love structure. I love routine. I need to know what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, so that, it feels like, yes, I've ticked off all the things. Thank you for pointing out an extra strength.
You're welcome.
Hit me with yours. Come on. I love that you sat there and listened the whole time to my strengths, and you clearly didn't think of yours.
Because I was listening to you.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
I think, what I do aside from co-hosting is I focus mostly on editing the shows, and I have gotten better since we first started, I would say. So I was using Audacity to edit our shows, and it was fine, but it was also a pain in the ass to use a lot of the time. And then we spoke with the wonderful people at iHeartRadio because we got a bit of a tutorial session.
We did.
Yep.
Thank you, Jay and Alyssa. It was brilliant.
And they told me to just basically forget Audacity and use Reaper. So that's what I've done. And Reaper is a lot better. But I'm still not quite on top of it. I'm still probably not doing it exactly right. I think probably as far as the strength goes, it's also an annoyance for other people. I am a perfectionist. And so, Jacinta can attest to this. A lot of the time when I do the editing, I will message her on Facebook saying, episode's fine, all that kind of stuff, but such and such is audio, usually mine. sounds
Usually
like
yours,
absolute garbage. And I spent ages trying to tweak the EQ and all that kind of stuff because I don't know what I'm doing. I don't really know sound theory. That's not my background.
No, you're completely self-taught. We're communications kids who are like, let's audio.
Yay! But yeah, I think as far as like being a strength though, the perfectionism allows me to make something which will help to make something which in the end I can say I put effort into this thing and it's going to reach people in some form for better or worse, like maybe it's garbage, but at least it's out there. And
Garbage.
And I did something because that's one of the biggest things that I have a problem with is that I don't feel as though I contribute very much to the world. And at the very least, doing this podcast makes me think, oh, maybe I kind of fucking am. Hey. So yeah, that was a big tangent and not really a strength, was it?
No, it was. You're a perfectionist and you try and do this podcast to the absolute best of your abilities, which is considerably impressive given that you are self-taught in audio production.
Yes, well, I guess I'm a bit of a prodigy, aren't I?
Well, I wouldn't go that far, mate. You're in your 30s. I don't think that's when you discover you're a prodigy.
I don't know, man. I don't know. No, it's not. It's definitely not. Man, I don't know. Strengths. Like, you already mentioned it, like, personality-wise, people seem to like me.
Yeah, they'd love you on the social media. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm just not as funny as you.
You just got to embarrass yourself some more.
I take it too seriously, so I try and make, like, proper what other people are doing, and you just take the piss, and everyone's like, yeah. I'm like, oh. So I clearly need to, like, sort myself out. Because I don't know, just the camera comes on and I'm like, must be cool. And it clearly comes off as very not cool.
See, that's what I think that I'm being cool. And that then inevitably leads to being the opposite. And then I've kind of just lent into that opposite. As this is the new cool. Embarrassing and deranged is the new cool.
Oh, you heard it here first. Absolutely. I think that one of your strengths, kind of extending on what you said, is that you are very honest. You are very generous. You give a lot. You are very open with, your experiences and things like that, which, given that, these topics are so taboo still and it's so hard to talk about and, it is emotionally draining to share all of that and relive experiences and stuff like that. I think it is very kind and generous of you to be as honest with the community as you are.
I would say the same of you, actually, but thank you.
Oh. Do you have... That sounded terrible. Cut that out. Give me one more strength. I feel like,
man.
I did 2 and you helped me with 1.
Oh, fuck.
So I helped you with that. One more.
Okay. When the podcast is finished recording, usually I'll sit on it for a day or something before editing, depending on the turnaround. But once I do start on it, I try to smash it out as quickly as possible, but at the same time, not being negligent with the quality or anything like that. I basically just get my laptop out and start working on it until it's done. And I don't really do anything else, really, unless I have to, have a break for some reason. Yeah, I'd say that I'm diligent. I'm a diligent person.
I was going to say diligent, and then I realized I've not heard that since, like, school reports.
Yep.
I literally have never heard the word, maybe not literally, but, like, I would gamble I haven't heard the word diligent outside of school reports.
What's a good synonym for diligent? Just like hard worker,
I guess,
yeah.
Which is, the thing,
Yeah.
But diligent. Yeah, no, you do work very hard on our podcast.
Diligent and conscientious is another one.
Good one. Yeah, half my subjects said that and the other half said Jacinta's shit. She needs to pay attention and stop
Did it
distracting
actually say
everyone.
that? Did it say Jacinta's shit?
Well, no, but they did say Jacinta needs to stop distracting others. Stop getting distracted and distracting others was it was 50-50. If I liked the subject, pleasure in class. If I didn't, Jacinta's not reaching her potential. But maybe we should go through our school reports in a separate episode.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
I was an angel.
Oh.
That's no hyperbole. I was descended from heaven.
Sure. So we've done the warm fuzzies. What's hard about making a podcast as a mentally ill boyo?
Yeah. I get attached to things very easily. And so when I'm editing in particular and listening back to the audio, sometimes, but not all the time, definitely not all the time, the content can really depress me. I get depressed sometimes when I'm editing. And that's not just from the content of the episode. That could be other factors on top of that. Plus we're talking about like bleak stuff.
Yeah.
But I would also argue that for the most part, most of our episodes aren't always like 100% depressing. Like there's usually something in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a struggle. I also, again, the perfectionism is also a struggle as much as a strength. And that gets me down. Like if I can't get things sounding right or at the very least presentable, I just get very angry at myself. Man, it's so easy to list the struggles.
Maybe we should have done the struggles first and then come back to our strengths. But we'll balance it. You've done 2 struggles.
There's also, I just want to also mention another struggle, which this is the anxiety part of things. Before we talk to guests, I often feel quite anxious. Because, most of the time they're strangers. And I often will fumble my words. You guys don't know that much because I cut it all out. But the amount of times that I stumble over my words and like have, malapropisms and stammering and all this kind of stuff, that's the beauty of being able to edit. I can make myself sound a lot cooler than I am. But I find it in the moment and directly after, I find that to be a struggle because I'm looking back and reflecting on something that isn't even about me. It's about our freaking guest. I'm like, I was an idiot. But, as we know, the difference between depression and narcissism is not that dissimilar because you are ultimately thinking about yourself all the time. And not to imply that depression and narcissism are the same thing. That's not. Anyway, that's it. Tell me what are your struggles?
Again, I feel like, immediately it feels so much easier to list the struggles than the strengths. The biggest one for me, which everyone who, has ever gone looking for our resources will know, the back end of things. After like the start, like finding guests and everything, that's all fine. I'm still not great on emails, but I'm getting there. But the show notes and everything that comes after we've had the conversation is just so hard because I think it's so many bits and pieces kind of thing. Like we were talking about it on our way into the studio today, and to do all of the bits and pieces before the episode it feels kind of easy and really natural because, you're researching and it's new and it's interesting and it's someone that you probably don't know about, or it's someone who I'm incredibly passionate about and I've read their stuff or I know their work or something and I'm excited to talk to them. And so that part of it doesn't really feel as much like work. That's just exciting and fun. But then after we've had the conversation, it all becomes a little bit harder because my ADHD brain, the novelty's gone. We've had that conversation. I know what it is. And so then it becomes, tracking down all of the resources that were mentioned and pulling them all together and then doing all the bits and pieces for the show notes, which is just like a bit irritating. Like it's fine, but it's just not fun.
Yep.
It's boring. And, I do go back and listen to the episodes after you've edited them just because you're a perfectionist and you like the second tick of approval. And I'm surprised that you didn't mention listening to yourself. A struggle.
I hate it. I hate listening to myself.
But for me, it's not so much I hate listening to myself. Like I don't like my voice. And we've confirmed I absolutely could never be the editor of this show. The biggest challenge for me is that, I've had that conversation. So I loved it in the moment and I love sharing it with other people, but listening to it again verbatim just doesn't hold my interest.
Yeah.
So if I'm listening to those episodes like before release, I know that the best practice, most time efficient thing to do would probably be to, while I'm listening, pull up the transcription, go through that while I'm doing that, then also be making notes of like, you know, quotes that I want to pull out and timestamps for those quotes and things like that I want to do for our social media and things like that. And, you know, it's not just doing the show notes. It becomes 5 different jobs that I'm having to do simultaneously. But then because of my all or nothing thinking and my perfectionist tendencies, now that I, you know, recognize, yes, I have the capacity to do all these things at the same time, doing them one by one and knowing that, you know, instead of doing it all at once, doing it individually is going to take extra hours, I then don't do any of it because I can't bring myself to do just a piece of that task now that my understanding of podcasting in the back end has become so much bigger and the potential has become so much bigger. I'm like, well, I need transcriptions, I need social content. We could be making these episodes a blog and stuff. And so I've built it up so much of what needs to come out of that one re-listen because I know that if I don't get it done in that one re-listen, I'm not going to go back and re-listen again because I just can't because it's just so boring. Yeah. And that's like, it's not at all that I find our conversations boring. It's not that I find our guests boring. It's just that I've already had that experience.
Yeah. I think that anyone listening who has ADHD or knows someone with ADHD would understand that completely. Like if you've done the thing, then your brain is seeking out new other things that are going to,
And so, the biggest thing that tends to happen is that I'm constantly looking forward and I'm never backtracking and, you know, putting up the things that we need. So I'm, you know, constantly missing show notes and I'm not doing the SEO that everyone tells me we need to keep doing and things like that. And our social media is grim and infrequent at best. And it's purely because you've filmed something kind of thing. So I think, you know, the executive functioning and the all or nothing thinking around the tasks that I think need to be done is really a barrier that I'm running into. I'm also starting to struggle. You know, I said earlier that I think I'm okay with emails, but thinking about it now, like I think I am starting to struggle just in terms of because of all the different things that I do, because I do a lot of different things. Yeah. So I've got, you know, I'm monitoring the podcast email and then I'm also monitoring my personal email and then I'm now monitoring my PhD email and I'm monitoring my Bookstagram email still because sometimes that feeds into the other places even though I haven't really been posting that much and, you know, I'm trying to do stuff for my own social media and it feels like I've got all of these avenues that information's coming to me from and I can't keep track of them. So I just forget to switch accounts kind of thing. Like I'm almost at the point where I'm considering my phone is on its way out. I am genuinely considering when this phone becomes not fully functional, getting a new phone and this becomes a podcast phone just because my brain doesn't see it as, you know, one thing with lots of different things. Yeah. It's compartmentalizing everything. And so I feel like I need a podcast phone and I need a personal phone and things like that, even though like I absolutely don't, but it's just a thing of knowing like that's where all that content is. That's where all the videos are. That's where all the emails are. That's that thing. And I think it's very much, you know, like we spoke to Jess Horn about, my brain is trying to put them all in boxes. And so that means that I'm not switching as often as I maybe want to be to stay on top of things because I just can't. I just literally can't. Like it's just too much. Yeah. So I think the executive functioning and the reduction of novelty are the two biggest things that impact me with the show. Because everything else, like, it's great, I'd say.
There's something as well, like what constantly I remind myself of when I'm trying to be perfectionist and all that kind of stuff is that it's just two of us doing the whole production. Just two of us plus the guest.
Just the two of us.
Just the two of us. And not only that, it's two people who aren't necessarily 100% on the ball the whole time as far as like mental health and neurodivergence goes. We're making a podcast about neurodivergence and mental health coming from that perspective. And as a result, our performance is going to be framed around that, surely. Like, so I don't know. I think it would be easy to kind of in retrospect go, oh, you know, maybe we could have done this and that and sorted all this other stuff out first or whatever. before actually producing. But I think that would betray the very nature of what we're trying to do, really.
I also think if we had because like we did just kind of launch in,
Yeah.
just jumped in the deep end.
Yeah.
And I think that if we hadn't, I probably wouldn't have been so excited. You know, I think it's been really fun and exciting and challenging but rewarding because it's been a learning curve and because we just have absolutely no idea what we're doing. And that's meant that we're constantly learning the whole way, which has meant that it's remained interesting and it's remained challenging and stimulating and things like that compared to, you know, other hobbies that haven't lasted kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like this has become more than a hobby now. This is a thing that I do that I am passionate about that I want to keep doing forever kind of thing. Also, yeah, if we had done a bunch of planning and stuff, I don't think that would have done much to slow me down or anything. I think if we had have pre-planned, I do have a tendency to bite off more than I can chew. And if I had have had a better understanding of all of the possibilities and all of the things that you can tie into a podcast and all of the options and things like that, I already pushed us too quickly to a weekly schedule. I already constantly be like, we could add this, we could add this. And if we had have pre-planned any more than we did, I would have known too much about podcasting and I would have tried to make us run before we could fucking crawl. There was absolutely no other way for me to start a podcast.
Yeah.
Because it would have been just way too much too fast. And then I would have been gutted that it didn't get the results, that I wasn't instantly number one on the charts and things like that. Like I would have been comparing myself too much to other people, whereas not being professionals in this industry in any way and not having a clear idea and figuring it out as we go has felt, one, more natural, but two, it's meant that, you know, when we have slumps or when things don't go how we want, it's fine. And then when we have wins, like, you know, when Apple Podcasts shared us that time and we were next to Auntie Donna, it was amazing. Those things were huge because that wasn't even a thing that I knew we could do until I just came across the form that day. And, you know, the fact that every once in a while we chart in the mental health charts, that's insane because we're tiny, we're little. And so I think it, you know, makes those wins even sweeter because they're such a surprise because we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know. So I like the lack of planning. Obviously, now that we're like not big, shop that. Obviously, now that we've been doing this for a while and we know more than we did, the planning's probably going to have to get a little bit better in terms of I'm going to have to get more consistent. But that's something that we learnt along the way and I'm happy with it. Obviously, you know, the whole thing's been a huge learning curve for both of us. Hooray. What are the top tips and tricks or the lessons that you've learned that you think would have genuinely been very helpful to know before we dived into this?
I can give a couple of answers to that. A lot of them are going to be related to the editing side. And one thing that I didn't know to start with was that you should always normalize the tracks so that they're not all over the place. And, you know, I've learned a few shortcuts on Reaper and on Audacity. That's the technical side of things. I think that probably, this is going to sound so wanky, but one of the most important things I think is when we have guests. I already mentioned that I get really anxious about talking to people I don't know and that I get tongue-tied and stumble over words and all that kind of stuff. And I'm constantly trying to think of questions in the moment alongside the ones that we have written. I'm constantly trying to think of things to say in the moment to sound like I'm actually engaging because it's so hard. It's really hard to get across in an audio format that the people that are conducting the interview are actively listening unless you respond with something that is directly related, which you're very good at.
Oh.
I am not very good at that. And so the thing that I've learned is that instead of stressing about that, I think it's far better to just to listen to the person talking and take it all in, because as much as I am a co-host of the show, I'm also like an audience member of the guest, and active listening for me involves listening to the thing that is being said and then spending the rest of the day processing it, kind of thing. I can't really do the back and forth stuff. So it's a long-winded way of saying the lesson I've learned is to stop worrying about how I am perceived by our guests.
Good one. I like that. And, you know, I think that is absolutely like this is not to invalidate it or in anything like that. This is just to comment on our guests are so lovely that I know that that's something that you've held personally for a really long time and not something that's ever been like put onto you. That's absolutely something that you've, you know, been doing really personally and really privately, and we could have the nicest person in the world and you would still be like, oh no.
I hope they liked me. Yeah. So, the tip for that, I guess, would be to just, if you're doing a podcast and you're interviewing people, just fucking relax, hey.
Just be in the moment.
Just be in the moment. And if you can't think of anything in the moment and you're trying to think of something to say and it ends up being garbage and you feel embarrassed about it afterwards, no one cares except for you.
Yeah, no one might even know.
Yeah.
You could edit it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Just you and whoever you're doing the podcast with in that particular episode know. And you know what? They've probably forgotten.
Yeah, exactly. So that's those are my... that I can think of off the top of my head. If I come up with another one while you're talking, I will interject.
I understand.
But what about you? Do you have any tips and tricks for kids?
Absolutely. This is one that, you know, we've been figuring out kind of through a lot of different ways and we didn't learn the lesson fucking fast at all. Get silent fidget toys. Lachlan and I are both hand talkers and...
I'm sitting on mine at the moment.
Literally, we've had to move him away from the desk and move the mic stand to just hang out over because he kept tapping the desk. I always bump my microphone stand. Just we're constantly moving and we're such clumsy people that a big part of our crappy audio is that it took us 18 months to be like, we should get some silent fidget toys, which we still haven't done. It's literally something that today I was like, oh, we should do that.
Yeah.
18 months in as neurodivergent people, like, are you serious? So like that was a big one of be more mindful of your movements.
Oh, yeah.
Which, you know, I think that's honestly, I'll be surprised if anyone else is like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that. I feel like that's just us. I think the other thing that I've learnt is kind of like you, just to relax. Like, not necessarily like, I was already pretty relaxed in conversations. I'm a loose unit. I interrupt. I get up in everyone's business. But more so like, as not ideal as it is, the community has been so chill with, you know, our lack of social media and, you know, missing show notes and stuff like that. And they'll email in and fill it in for us and stuff like that. And I think knowing that, you know, everyone is understanding and everyone does come to it knowing who we are kind of thing. You're like, yeah, all right, you're not expecting perfect.
Yeah.
And if you are, you're absolutely on the wrong show.
Yeah.
But to, you know, kind of balance things a little bit more because I was putting so much pressure on myself all of last year to try and make this, you know, weekly. And I wanted to do 3 episodes a week. I basically wanted to be like out of the gates, she's on the money and stuff like that. Like there was so many podcasts like that I looked up to that I wanted to emulate, which you can't do immediately. I had to keep sitting down and be like, they were going for X number of years kind of thing. Chill out. So kind of trying to be a little more relaxed. I think that did swing too far the other way where I haven't been on top of enough stuff. But it's a balancing act and we're figuring it out. And, you know, that's something that I've learned. I've learned that what is too much and what is not enough. That's the big one, probably. Those 2 are like the big ones. And then I think people are just so friendly and so giving. Like so many of the people that we've reached out to, even the people who've said no, have said no because like they literally just can't fit it in the schedule. They don't have the spoons, stuff like that.
And sometimes it's like, no, I can't fit it in the schedule, but in the future.
Yeah, hit me up in a couple of months kind of thing. Yeah. And, you know, we do. And, you know, everyone's just been so generous with their time that it's not that I didn't think people were nice, but it's I didn't realize how many people would give a baby podcast with two people who have no profile a chance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, the community that we've built around us in the last 18 months is just absolutely delightful. The people that we've been able to talk to and the fact that people are willing to say yes. So, like, if you're on the fence and you're like, oh, I don't know if I should slide into their DMs, I'd say 9 times out of 10 people are okay with it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I hear people don't, you know, they're worried about asking people to come on their podcast. They're worried about sending authors nice messages about their books and things like that. I think there's so many people who, on their side of things, they're so worried about being an inconvenience to someone else. But if you flip it on the other side and you think about how you'd feel if you got asked to be on a podcast, or if you got a really nice review on whatever it is that you do, or, you know, you had that engagement in some way, I'd be fucking stoked. And I'd say most people are stoked. And so it's just been rethinking how I kind of go about, like, I'll just approach anyone.
Yeah.
I already did for the most part now, but, like, I think that's one of the big things that, like, if someone was worried about starting a podcast, to be like, just jump in.
Yeah.
Just jump in. Because it's like, unless you are studied in it, I guess, like, unless this is your job or what you've studied, it's never going to be perfect.
Yeah.
Chat 10 Looks 3 started on, like, Apple
phones, yeah.
and they sounded terrible.
Yep.
But, like, obviously Lee Sales and Annabelle Crabb are queens. So, you know, it worked out for them. But it's never going to be perfect, and that's okay. I think that's something that, you know, I have learned, and that, you know, you have developed, and both of us in our different perfectionisms are kind of coming to okay, this is how much energy we can be putting in.
Yes.
Before, you know, we don't enjoy doing it, because we don't want to get to a point ever where we don't love doing it.
Resent it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So find your balance.
Yes.
And if you're in Melbourne, come to the State Library recording studio. It is brilliant. They are all wonderful. It's super nice.
That's a very good tip, actually.
But if you're looking at starting and you have the spoons and the capacity to physically record somewhere else, which I understand, you know, not everyone does, and, you know, this absolutely couldn't be our day job.
No.
But check out, you know, your local library. You know, we deep dived after looking into the State Library one, and we found that, you know, there's a lot of libraries in, like, the Melbourne suburbs that do. I know that Newcastle Library has a recording studio. So instead of forking out the cash and getting entry-level gear that you probably don't know how to use, see if you can get a free recording studio first.
Yeah.
Because, again, that's something that 18 months in would be nice.
Yeah.
To wrap up, you know, we want to leave it on a positive, because we absolutely do love this show, regardless of our areas for improvement and things like that. We checked in at the end of last year, but I want to check in again. What is your favourite part about doing the podcast still?
Hanging out with my mate.
Ah, that's me, right?
No. Yeah, of course it is.
Get on. Hanging out with me. Ooh. Buddy.
No, it's true. I like doing things with my friends, and this is something that has meaning attached to it. You know, it's good. That's probably my favorite thing. I guess as well, much the exact same thing that I said at our end of year episode. I like learning things from guests. I've even just reiterated it today several times. I like hearing people talk about stuff that they're well versed in or passionate about. So yeah, that's my favorite thing. Also, actually, another thing, I like when we get books delivered in the mail and I read them.
You do love getting mail.
I like getting mail, and the books that we've read this year so far, I enjoy the process because it just reminds me of doing my honours degree, the part of my honours that I actually enjoyed, which was the research part, where I just liked reading the stuff and then finding things and I'm like, that's relevant, and then sticking in post-it notes and stuff and like compiling a list or compiling a folder really of relatable points.
I think you're just describing research.
I am describing research, yeah. I am. That's my favorite thing to do, I guess.
That is lovely.
What a fucking nerd I am.
Nerd.
What about you? What's your fave?
I had something right then and I forgot because we were too busy bullying you.
Yeah, bullying me.
I feel like it's a dick move now if I don't say hanging out with you because you said hanging out with me. But like, I'm not going to be a sap.
I wasn't being a sap.
I know, but like, you know, it's a given. God. I'm not going to say it back just because you said it. Jeez.
You already did though, so.
Good one.
Yeah.
My favorite thing is probably, look, I do love the guests and I love the chats and all of that. I think, you know, everything that I said in our yearly check-in still stands. My latest favorite thing is probably the community, I think, and, you know, finding different people that even people who aren't guests and things like that, just, you know, members of our group and learning more about, you know, what everyone else does. Not even in like a big interviewee way, just in a, hey, like responses to when we talked about Simone and Lucas's recipe situation and just connecting with the group and things like that. Just hearing what you guys think is so delightful and reminds us that you're on the other end of the microphone, and it's just sometimes so funny and it makes me so happy, you know, and there's just so many new small businesses and new crafts and new ideas and things that I've learnt just through the community.
Yeah.
Beyond, you know, our guests and things like that, that I think has been so wonderful. Like I've had so many resources come from them and sent to us personally that, you know, that's probably my latest hyperfixation favorite thing. Yeah, just chatting with everyone.
Nice. So let me understand that I said that my favorite part was hanging out with my friend Jacinta, and then you one-upped me by saying, yes, but it's all about the people, really.
I've got new friends now. Oh, delightful. Well, if you guys plan on starting your own podcast, hit us up. We want to hear it.
Yep.
The more that are out there, the better it probably is. You know, as long as you keep listening to ours. We'll be sad if you replace us.
And don't copy our shit. This is ours, okay?
But we hope that this is, given just a little bit of a glimpse into why the podcast is the way it is, I guess.
I'm sure that there are several other things that we didn't touch on because it is such a, like, podcasting, I'm going to sound like I'm an expert on it, and I'm fucking not, but I feel as though podcasting is such a weird, nebulous type of thing that you do. It is so much less structured than any other form of media that I've ever been involved in. It's less structured than like making film and TV. It's less structured than making music. It's just...
Yeah, I wonder if that's just us.
Well, maybe, but I just feel as though at the end of the day, there's only so many variations that you can do, and it's always going to end up being some sort of product which is audio, like people talking, you know, I guess you got like audio dramas and stuff, which is different, but because of the nature of conversation and it's unscripted and people mess up their words sometimes and all that kind of stuff, I just feel as though there's so much room for things to evolve and not be how they were going to be to begin with. So yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but basically podcasting's weird.
Podcasting is weird. That's the takeaway. There you go. Yep. Podcasting is weird. See you next week.
See you guys. Thank you so much for listening. As always, any resources that we discussed in this episode will be linked in our show notes. Do you want to hang out with us in our lovely growing online community? Well, then join us in our Facebook group. We share our stories, resources, memes. It's basically just a nice and fun place to be. You can also check out our Instagram at Differently Brained Podcast, as well as mine and Jacinta's own personal accounts. All of our episodes are available to download and listen to on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you find your podcasts.
Differently Brained shares the opinions of individuals and does not consider your personal circumstances. Differently Brained exists purely for information purposes and should not be relied on as health or medical advice. Because no brain is the same, please consult your healthcare professional for your personal medical needs.